for a free case review.
When you're the victim of a car accident, hiring the right law firm can be the difference between a rewarding settlement and striking out. Call the pros at MVP Accident Attorneys at 833-MVP-WINS for your free consultation.
Call me your MVP.
Hi, this is Tavis.
Tavis, this is Dr. K. We've got a lot to talk about. I'll be in town on the 28th of February. Can you clear your calendar?
Absolutely, Dr. King. Good Lord, do I have some questions for you, sir. Hi, it's Tavis.
Assalamu alaikum, my brother. This is Minister Malcolm. Now, I heard that you and Martin are getting together for a public dialogue on February 28th. You see, now I already know the date. I know y'all not trying to keep me out of that conversation, are you?
No, sir. No, sir.
What happened to George Floyd shouldn't happen, not even to a dog. How long must the Negro continue to endure this foolishness at the hands of law enforcement? People can take but so much before they reach a breaking point. What do you mean, Black Lives Matter? Black lives haven't mattered in this country since Negroes stopped working for free at the end of slavery. You ought to be talking about Black Guns Matter and start your own NRA. Call it the Negro Revolutionary Amalgamation.
Don't miss this compelling historic radio event, The Return. When Tavis Smiley converses with Malcolm X and Martin Luther King Jr. Tuesday, February 28th, 9 a.m. Pacific Time, exclusively on KBLA Talk 1580.
You will not be able to stay home, brother. You will not be able to plug in, turn on, and cop out. You will not be able to lose yourself on Skag and skip out for beer during commercials because the revolution will not be televised. The revolution will not be televised. The revolution will not be brought to you by Xerox in 4 parts without commercial interruptions. The revolution will not show you pictures of Nixon blowing a bugle and leading a charge by John Mitchell, General Abrams, and Spyro Agnew to eat hog maws confiscated from a Harlem sanctuary. The revolution will not be televised. The revolution will not be brought to you by the...
We read one day, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. But if a man doesn't have a job or an income, he has neither life nor liberty and the possibility for the pursuit of happiness. He merely exists.
He merely exists. I'm Tavis Smiley. This is KBLA Talk 1580. Our phone number 1-800-920-1580, 1-800-920-1580. Glad to have you with us in this final hour on King Day 2023, what would have been the 94th birthday officially yesterday of the person I regard as the greatest American this country's ever produced, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Today, of course, the national holiday, and we are spending all 3 hours of this program today. We are now we've arrived in hour 3 safely, but spending all 3 hours unpacking what King called the 3 major evils facing this democracy: racism, poverty, and militarism. Here we are 55 years after his assassination, and we are still confronted with this triple threat facing our democracy: racism, poverty, and militarism. I believe that the future of this democracy is inextricably linked to how seriously we take the legacy of Dr. King. For me, that legacy is justice for all, service to others, and a love that liberates people. That's the legacy: justice for all, service to others, and a love that liberates people. But you can't protect that legacy without wrestling with this triple threat of racism, poverty, and militarism. In our first hour today, we spent the hour talking about racism with the brilliant public intellectual Robin D.G. Kelley out of UCLA. In our second hour, we talked about militarism with the brilliant professor out of Cal State, LA, Dr. Melina Abdullah, co-founder of Black Lives Matter, LA. And in this hour, for the first 30 minutes, we're going to talk about poverty with another brilliant scholar, Dr. Algernon Austin, on the evil of poverty, income inequality, and economic mobility. He is Director for Race and Economic Justice at the Center for Economic and Policy Research. We'll start the hour with him and close the hour with the new mayor, relatively new mayor of Montgomery, Alabama. He is the first African-American, 57 mayors in this historic city, Montgomery, the home of the Montgomery Bus Boy Scout, the home of Dr. King's first pastorate at the Dexter Avenue Baptist Church, and now 57 mayors in, a black man is running the city of Montgomery. We'll talk to Mayor Stephen Reed on the B side of this hour. But now, pleased to have Dr. Algernon Austin back on this program, on this King Day. Happy King Day, Dr. Austin. How are you, sir?
I am doing well. Happy King Day to you. It's
good to have you on the program. Thank you for your time. Let me jump right in to make the most of these 30 minutes that we have on the top side of this hour. You know King's Edict as well as I do. Racism, poverty, militarism, that triple threat. As I said earlier, we've talked about racism and militarism today. Want to get to the issue of poverty with you. Here we are in 2023, and if King were to return and to look at the levels and the rates of poverty in this country and economic immobility, he'd be stunned. I'm looking for a note that I wrote to myself a few moments ago. We heard on the news break in the last hour some update. Here it is. We heard some updated numbers on some updated wealth stats. So this was breaking news just last hour, released, of course, in time for the King holiday, given that everybody knows that King was organizing a Poor People's Campaign at the time of his assassination. So this data just in. The richest 1% of people in the world, the 1%ers around the globe, now own and control 2/3 of the world's wealth. The top 1% now own and control 2/3 of the world's wealth. In the last 2 years alone, they've increased their coffers by $2.6 trillion. The top 1% controls 2/3 of the world's wealth, and in 2 years alone, the last two, they've increased their coffers by $2.6 trillion. What do you make, first of all, Dr. Austin, of that data?
Well, it shows that we are a highly dysfunctional world. We can't be a truly healthy country for the United States, a healthy world with this level of inequality. And what you see, the results of this is a lot of strife, a lot of violence, a lot of conflict, both within this country and abroad, that stems from this. I mean, people are when you look both in the U.S. and globally, people are literally starving. People are being evicted from their homes. People cannot afford the health care that they need. People cannot afford the education that they need. So this is a fundamental. It is a moral issue. So I think it's really important to take Dr. King's moral leadership and moral outrage at what he saw when he looked at this in the 1960s.
What makes the indictment against the U.S. so much more visceral for me is that the U.S., the United States of America, is the richest nation in the history of the world. We are the richest nation in the history of the world. If we were to give a pass, and I'm not suggesting that we should, but if we give other nations around the globe a pass on the progress they've not made on the issues of poverty and income inequality and economic immobility, it's hard to give the U.S. a pass, given that we are the richest nation in the history of the world, and that, to my mind, is a damning indictment of this nation, Dr. Austin.
It quite is. Because you can't repeat that point enough, that how rich we are, because unfortunately you have many politicians who always want to say, oh, we can't afford it, we need to tighten our belts, etc., when you raise the issue of what we're going to do to address poverty. But we can afford it. We are extremely rich. And even when you compare the United States to other rich Western countries, and those countries aren't without criticisms either, but when you can look at UNICEF and their report card on child well-being. And the United States, they're looking at the richest, like 20 or 30 countries. The United States is near the bottom, highest rates of child poverty. It is truly shameful that basically all of Western Europe does better at reducing child poverty than we do. Canada does better than we do. Spain does better than we do. Everyone. South Korea does better than we do in terms of reducing child poverty. And there's no justification for that. There's no excuse for that. It's a real political failure and a real moral failure.
It's a shame and a disgrace. And to your point about being a moral and a political failure, I want to come back to that issue in a moment and ask why we think that is. 55 years after his death, America is still failing morally, still failing politically, still failing clearly economically. Is it a will question or a skill question? Why are we at the bottom of all of these lists when it comes to doing what needs to be done to alleviate poverty, income inequality, and economic immobility? We'll put that question and more to Dr. Algernon Austin when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
We've got a lot to talk about. Good thing we've got 3 hours. More of Tavis Smiley when we come forward. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
Hi, Maisha Cairo here, KBLA, live at Chase Bank on Crenshaw and Vernon for the In This Together tour with female business owners, a day of empowerment, community panels, and best of all, tips on building business from marketing to capital. Today I spoke with Tatiana, a community manager for JP Morgan Chase.
Thank you so much. Yes, my name is Tatiana Roberts. I am a community manager for JP Morgan Chase. I have to honestly say that this has been the most fulfilling position that I've ever had, where I get to give back to the community because I saw my mom's struggles. That's really what fuels what I do to make sure that that the community has all the access to the resources that my mother didn't have.
So for the mother who's in
basis and taking action to either fix your credit, maintain your credit, or rebuild your credit. The second thing would be budget. I know that B word is kind of like ugly for right? A lot of people don't like that B word, but it has to be done. We need to tell our money where to go. The last thing is to build a network of supporters that are going to lift you up.
the community building here in Crenshaw is that network. So visit the Chase Community Center on Crenshaw and Vernon. Meet a banker today. Tell them about your business. I'm Maisha Cairo in the community for KBLA with JP Morgan Chase.
I'm getting vaccinated with Prevnar 20.
So am I, because I'm at risk for pneumococcal pneumonia.
I'm asking about Prevnar 20 because there's a chance pneumococcal pneumonia could put me in the hospital.
Age 65 or older, you may be at increased risk for pneumococcal pneumonia. Ask your doctor or pharmacist about getting vaccinated with Prevnar 20, pneumococcal 20-valent conjugate vaccine, a Pfizer vaccine that can help protect against pneumococcal pneumonia in just one dose. Prevnar 20 is approved for adults to help prevent infections from 20 strains of the bacteria that cause pneumococcal pneumonia. Continued approval may depend on a supportive study. Don't get Prevnar 20 if you've had a severe allergic reaction to the vaccine or its ingredients. Adults with weakened immune systems may have a lower response to the vaccine. The most commonly reported side effect was pain at the injection site. For additional common side effects and full prescribing information, please call 1-855-213-2138 or visit Prevnar20.com.
I want to be able to keep my plans.
So I'm asking my doctor about getting vaccinated with Prevnar 20.
This is Danny Morrison from The Danny Morrison Show. Time for a conversation that I feel that we should be having more as a community. It's Sona Agarwal. She's a medical officer with the California Department of Public Health. As we approach the holidays and people are gathering more, I'm a little bit nervous hanging around with friends and family with the surge taking place. So what do you think we should do?
I'm also nervous, and I also want to see my friends and family. So the best thing that you and I and everyone else can do is to protect ourselves and our loved ones by doing a few really simple things. The first one is to stay home when you're sick. Wear a mask when you're able to, or when you're in large crowds, or when you're feeling particularly nervous, and wash your hands a lot. These common sense prevention methods are the best way to prevent the spread of germs. We actually have a hotline, 833-422-4255, or you can go to the website, covid19.ca.gov/treatment, and that's COVID-19 with the number 19.
Thank you so much in your efforts to keep us COVID-free all throughout the holidays. Have a blessed one, okay?
Thank you.
We're not ratings driven. We're engagement driven. You're listening to KBLA Talk 1580.
Check it out.
I'm Tavis Smiley. You're listening to KBLA Talk 1580, unapologetically progressive talk radio for you. I'm Tavis Smiley, and glad to have you in this hour as we talk to Dr. Algernon Austin about that third of these triple threat evils that Dr. King suggested face our democracy: racism, poverty, and militarism. We've discussed racism in hour one, militarism in hour two, and here we are in hour three now, talking about the issue of poverty. Dr. Austin, you sort of teed this up before that break a moment ago. Let me come right back to it. We are failing morally. We are failing politically on the issue of poverty and income inequality and economic immobility. You note I always mention all three of those because those three things are inextricably linked. King talked about 60 years ago what he called a revolution of values, that America needed a revolution of values. On this particular issue of poverty, what does that revolution of values look like for you?
Well, this year, not only is it King's birthday, but this year is the 60th anniversary of the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom, where King gave his famous I Have a Dream speech. And it's important for people to remember that the march was a march for jobs and freedom. So the economic concerns were already there very strongly. And one of the demands of the march was for a massive federal program to train and place all unemployed workers, Negro and white, on meaningful and dignified jobs at decent wages. And that's a quote of one of the demands of the march. And in this 60th anniversary year, my organization, the Center for Economic and Policy Research, and 9 other leading economic policy organizations are really lifting up King's vision and saying that we need to realize this. We need full employment for all, and people can find out more at the website fullemploymentforall.org. And we're calling for a federal program of subsidized employment. Right now, you will hear the national news about we're in a period of low unemployment, and that's the national statistics. But in every state in this country, there are pockets of high unemployment. So, for example, in Flint, Michigan, although last year the unemployment rate was less than 4% nationally, Flint, Michigan, it was almost 11%, so still in double digit. In Washington, D.C., if you look for the black population in D.C., it's in the last quarter almost 11%, still in double digits. And there are other communities, other areas like this all across the country. And Dr. King called, this was one of the things that he was so concerned about in the last year of his life, making sure that people get jobs and get incomes to alleviate poverty. This is what the Poor People's Campaign was about. And we still need it, unfortunately. The black unemployment rate in '63 was twice the white unemployment rate. Today, it is still twice the white unemployment rate. So the black America still needs a jobs program to make sure that every black person who wants a job, who needs a job, can get a job.
It should make each of us angry. It certainly does make me angry to hear those stats, and particularly the last data point you shared with us, that black unemployment 60 years ago, 6 decades ago, black unemployment, which King and those others in the movement were railing against at that March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom, the black unemployment rate was twice that of white folk. 60 years later, the black unemployment rate is still twice that of white folk. There's some things that I'd be embarrassed to tell Dr. King were he here today, because it just shows that we've made no progress. I mean, in some areas we've made some progress, but on this particular and stubborn issue of poverty and income inequality and economic mobility, we have made absolutely zero progress. Let's just call a spade a spade. If we were twice the unemployment rate of white folks 60 years ago, and we're still twice the unemployment rate of white folks 60 years later, we've made absolutely no progress. You ain't got to be a math major to know that means you ain't done nothing in 60 years. How did you read that, Dr. Austin?
Yeah, you took the words out of my mouth. I get embarrassed talking about it.
It's embarrassing, man.
Yes, it's just like, wow. But the only thing I do is like, okay, well, let's try not to be here at the 78th anniversary.
Yeah.
So that's why we have this campaign. It's like, let's put this on the agenda. Let's try to get, people in Congress. This coalition where, just like King did in his final year, recognizing, again, this is in every state, every race, so we're looking at, just like King did, we're looking at whites in Appalachia, we're looking at Native American communities that are suffering from high unemployment, we're looking at Latino communities in the Southwest suffering from high unemployment. And like King was trying to do, if we can get all of these groups to put it on their agenda and to say this is a problem, and like we were saying before, we are an incredibly rich country. We know how to solve this. We can solve this. We can make the investments to solve this. So it's a lot of work, but it's just like King saw. It's something that is possible, but we have to figure out how to get it done, how to get the attention of our elected officials to make it a reality.
No, I hear the point you're getting to now, and it's the age-old debate about will versus skill. Is this a will problem or a skill problem? And clearly we have the skill. We know how to do it. We just don't possess 60 years later the will to do anything about poverty and income inequality and economic immobility. King famously said, as you know, Dr. Austin, that budgets are moral documents. Budgets are moral documents. Show me what your budget is, and I'll tell you what your priorities are, because budgets are moral documents. It seems to me that not much has changed in the way we do the budget process in Washington or in state capitals. What's your read on why 60 years later our budgets are still telling a very clear story about what we prioritize and what doesn't matter to us?
Well, I unfortunately I wasn't able to hear your segment on militarism, but our military budget is incredibly large.
Exactly, and growing. Yeah.
So that's one major imbalance. But it also, our political system, unfortunately, caters to the 1%. And that's why, and the 1% structures our policies that favors the 1%. So that's why we're seeing the trends that are going on. So we need more democracy. We need to, getting to the other reason why voting rights is so important. We need a strong democracy. Everybody needs to be involved and engaged and able to, without obstruction and intimidation, able to participate fully in our democracy. Because once we have a stronger democracy, then the 1% won't be writing all of the rules.
Yep. I wonder how Dr. King might process the phrase you just used, more democracy. That's obviously what he was fighting for. I mentioned earlier in this program, I gave a talk last night here in LA at a major King event, and I talked about the fact that we always want to see King as a dreamer. And I tried to advance this notion last night, submit to the audience that King was not just a dreamer, that King was a democratizer. He was a democratizer. And black people, at our best, that's what we've done. We are the ones who have democratized this nation to the extent that we are a democracy. I argued last night that America is not a democracy. At best, we are an experiment in democracy. And here you come the day after saying that what we need is more democracy. Well, that's exactly what King was fighting for all those years ago. What do you make of the fact that here we are again, 60 years since the March on Washington, 55 years after his assassination, and we got people like you on this program calling still for more democracy?
Yeah, it's a long and difficult struggle, and I'm no Martin Luther King.
None of us are. Yeah, none of us are. Yeah.
I hope that more people. There are lots of great people listening to this program right now. Lots of organizers, lots of political analysts. And I just hope that we can inspire them to engage on this issue, to engage the struggle for economic justice, to engage in the struggle to make this country, to make this experiment in democracy, more effective at being a true democracy.
Yeah.
Because yes, unfortunately, I don't have all the answers, but I'm hoping that there are people in your audience who can help us both and who can move this along.
Well, I don't have all the answers either. That's why I chose to be a talk show host. I'm good at questions. I'm good at asking questions. I don't have all the answers either. But let me ask this question as I ask a question with a minute and a half to go here. With regard specifically to black people, again, we established earlier that we were twice the unemployment rate of white folk 60 years ago at the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom. 2023, we are still twice the unemployment rate for white folk in America today. Here's my question. For black folk in particular, do the numbers remain stagnant as they have been for 60 years? Do they get worse? Put another way, are black folk preordained, predestined to always be in this state?
I don't see it as preordained. I think it's a very difficult struggle. But we are a wealthy nation. It does not have to be this way. It's a matter of building the coalitions and building the political power. And we can transform this. I mean, we have the potential to be a truly, great nation, a truly great democracy, if we can address the problems that you're addressing today. If we can get past the racism, if we can get past the militarism, if we can get past this extreme economic inequality, we can really be an inspiration to the entire globe.
Yeah. There's a biblical admonition that suggests that the poor you will have with you always. I just didn't think that scripture meant that we were going to be the poor always. And I'm hoping that we can, again, arrest that development. For now, we'll leave it there. Dr. Algernon Austin, we thank you for your work and your witness and for this fine program that you're engaging later in the year. And hopefully we'll talk about it as we move toward the 60th anniversary of the March on Washington. Thank you for your time, sir.
Thank you. My pleasure.
After news, traffic, and sports, 57 mayors in Montgomery, Alabama, finally has an African-American leading the city as chief executive. We will speak with Mayor Stephen Reed when we come forward after news, traffic, and sports on KBLA Talk 1580.
We don't try to be all things to all people. We just remain true to who we are. You're listening to KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm John Marshall. Here's the latest on the Black Information Network. Amazon is parting ways with personality Jeremy Clarkson after comments he made about Meghan Markle. Clarkson makes 2 shows for Amazon Prime Video, including The Grand Tour and Clarkson's Farm. The presenter recently wrote a column in The Sun where he said he hates Markle and referred to a scene from Game of Thrones where a character is forced to strip naked and go on a walk of shame. The president of the NAACP says the racial wealth gap is, quote, the single greatest barrier to realizing the civil rights dream of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. In a statement released on what would have been the late activist's 94th birthday, Derek Johnson explained there is much work left to be done. He went on to say one of the keys is comprehensive student debt relief and called on elected leaders to have the courage to act. Research shows the racial wealth gap has widened recently. That's the latest. I'm John Marshall on your home for 24/7 News, the Black Information Network, and BINews.com.
Save big store-wide at the Truckload event at Lowe's, happening now. For a limited time, get up to 50% off select tools and accessories. Shop the event in-store or online today. Valid 12/29 through 1/25 while supplies last. Selection varies by location. See Lowe's.com for details.
Is this the time? This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
A special milestone for LeBron James. He joins Kareem Abdul-Jabbar as the only 2 players in NBA history to reach 38,000 points. LeBron is at 38,024 after dropping 35 in the Lakers' loss to the Sixers. He needs 364 to pass Kareem for the NBA's all-time scoring record. The Clippers got 31 points from Terrence Mann and 30 from Kawhi Leonard to beat Houston by 21. USC's women's basketball team upset the nation's number 2 team. They beat Stanford by 9. First win for USC over Stanford since 2014. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. This sports report was brought to you by MVP Accident Attorneys. When it comes to your settlement, we're a slam dunk. Call 833-MVP-WINS or check their website at themvp.com for a free case review.
When you're the victim of a car accident, hiring the right law firm can be the difference between a rewarding settlement and striking out. Call the pros at MVP Accident Attorneys at 833-MVP-WINS for your free consultation.
Call me your MVP.
Okay, so here's the truth about December 17th and why you should register on DeonRamble.com. Okay, get ready. DeonRamble.com and why you should register for a free event about contracts. December 17th to be with me, Rambo, and my special guest. First of all, if you don't have a lot of contracts right now, you need to be there. Like, the whole new year is coming in. I've been doing these events for a while now. Every event has over 500 minority business owners there. So if you haven't attended, you need to attend. And if you have attended, you probably already started winning contracts because the event's free. December 17th is a Saturday. It's only for 2 hours. My special guest can only talk up to 6 minutes. And these are the mayor's office, LA counties talking about contracts, the city, DeonRamble.com. So if I haven't convinced you December 17th to come to DeonRamble.com and register, I really don't know what else to do. It's all about contracts. DeonRamble.com, DeonRamble.com.
Life is uncertain. It's okay to feel stressed, anxious, worried, or frustrated. You and your loved ones need when you need it the most. Call our warm line at 833-317-4673 or live chat at calhope.org today.
The movie moved you, but the stage play will blow you away. It's Jacarius Johnson, New Jack City, live on stage.
Am I my brother's keeper? Yes, I am.
They were at the top of their game, but when loyalty and trust takes a hit,
DMB, man, we all we got.
So does survival.
Sit your $5 ass down before I make change.
Starring Big Daddy Kane, Stretch from Naughty by Nature, Flex Alexander, the original G Money, Alan Payne, and Gary Dourdan. January 20th through 22nd at the Orpheum Theater. Tickets at Ticketmaster.
This is KBLA Talk 1580, where everybody is somebody and nobody is a stranger. You belong here.
Delighted to have you with us in this hour, in this final half hour of today's program, celebrating the life and legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., as you hear me say all the time, the greatest American, to my mind, this country's ever produced. In this final 30 minutes, I am delighted to be joined by Mayor Stephen Reed. He is the 57th mayor of Montgomery, Alabama, and the first African-American to serve as chief executive of this historically rich civil rights mecca. Of course, Montgomery is the site of Dr. King's first pastorate at Dexter Avenue Baptist Church. Been there many times in my career. Of course, the site of the Montgomery bus boycott, which changed things in the South and across the nation, vis-a-vis transportation, so much more rich Black American history in this city of Montgomery, and I am pleased to be welcome now, to welcome to this program, I should say, to be joined by the first African-American mayor to lead this historic city of Montgomery, Mayor Stephen Reed. Happy King Day to you, Mayor. How are you, sir?
I'm doing well, Tavis. Happy King Day to you. How's everything in your world?
Man, if I complained, I'd be an ingrate. I'm just delighted to be in dialogue with you, delighted to be alive on this King Day, and delighted to celebrate your victory as the first African-American to lead the city of Montgomery. As I said, 57 mayors in. Thank God for Jesus, you finally show up. What caused this victory to happen?
You know, Taz, first, let me say this. You got to come back here. I met you on one of your visits here when you were speaking. I would love to have you back.
Yes, sir.
In the city sometime real soon. You know, I think, you know, what led me to seek this office was the need for change, answering the call of a generation that had done so much, had cleared so many paths for us, for us to really bring about more equality, more equity, and things from public health to public education, criminal justice reform. All of those were big parts of our platform at the time. And I had the luxury of actually getting to meet Mrs. King several times. My mother's from her hometown, and so I would see Mrs. King in a casual atmosphere, not just those atmospheres in Atlanta and in D.C. and other places, even in Montgomery around this time of the year. So just becoming closer to understanding what they fought for and why, I think, was a big motivation for myself.
Yeah. What is it? What's it like being the mayor of such a historic city, a city that is at the epicenter of the story of black civil rights, black progress in this country? I mean, again, it's a historic city for all the reasons I mentioned and all the other reasons I don't have time to go through. But what's it like presiding over a city that is part of the American story when you talk about civil rights?
It's humbling.
Yeah.
You know, if I had to put in one word, it is humbling. It really is. When I think of this office that I'm in right now, I'm at City Hall. Governor was inaugurated today, and there was a parade right down Dexter Avenue Baptist Church, right down Dexter Avenue, in front of Dexter Avenue Baptist Church, which is ironic in terms of what the politics are of Alabama relative to the proximity of the church. And so I came right here to do a little work. And, you know, one of the things that I think comes along with this office is responsibility. Responsibility of so many who are leading the struggle for equal rights and justice right here in Montgomery, in Alabama, and to carry on beyond this state. But also to make sure that we're putting that into policy. And we aren't just talking about it. I'm a big believer that our generation has to do more than talk. We have to do more than post. We have to do more than share outrage on social media. We have to be about the business. And I think for me, the responsibility is something that I welcome. It's kind of like being LeBron James or being the late, great Kobe Bryant and having the ball in your hands in the final seconds with the shot clock winding down. You want to be able to deliver, and you want to be able to bring things home for the community. And I think from my standpoint, having grown up in Montgomery, having gone to school at Morehouse College and understanding Dr. King's imperfections, understanding his path to where he was and some of the things that really encapsulated his leadership in those 39 years, it's empowering as well to be in this position to see that dream forward and to implement it in a 21st century way that I believe he and so many of those who marched and protested and led beside him would want us to do.
You said a few things I want to unpack right quick, and I'm going to accept your invitation to come back to Montgomery. I want to make sure I get in that city.
Thank you.
I want to come back while you are the mayor so I can get treated properly. Well, they always treat me nice in Alabama,
yes,
but I want to come back and celebrate you. Having met years ago, I want to come back and celebrate you as the mayor of that city, a historic mayor, first African-American to be mayor of Montgomery. I want to come on your watch and spend some time hanging out with you there in the city. But the very first time I came, Mayor Reed, to your city many years ago, I've been invited there many times to speak. One of the great joys of my life was that I had a chance to befriend Mrs. King, who you spoke of earlier, was a dear friend of mine, and Mrs. Rosa Parks was a dear friend of mine. And I was honored when I was asked to eulogize her at her funeral. There were 3 funerals for Rosa Parks, one at her home church there in Montgomery. The second was when she lay in repose at the U.S. Capitol, the first woman to be so honored in the U.S. Capitol. And then the final service, of course, was at her adopted home of Detroit, back at Greater Grace Church in Detroit, where my friend Bishop Charles Ellis is pastor. She moved to Detroit after she left Alabama, went there, stayed in Detroit for many years, working for the late Congressman John Conyers, right? So there were 3 different funerals, plural, for Rosa Parks, but I was honored to be invited to speak at the first one at her home church in Montgomery, and I remember it like it was yesterday. It was just a great honor in my life because we were such good friends. I raised that because years ago, on my very first trip to Montgomery, I was stunned. I know this history, I've studied it, and at this point I've written about it, and I'm just, it's a part of me. I love the civil rights era in this country's history. And so I think I know a lot about it, but when I got to Montgomery, I never really considered the layout of the city. And to the point you made earlier, when I realized how close in proximity Dexter Avenue Baptist Church is, where King first pastored, to the state capitol, I was stunned how close they are in proximity. And to your point, they are so close in proximity, but there couldn't be a greater divide between the hallmark of these historic locations in Montgomery with the politics in the state of Alabama. That was fascinating for me, man.
Yeah, and you know, I think it is for a lot of people. You know, it really is to understand that for those who have not been here, and again, we welcome all of your audience to come. We've had so many people come from LA and California and across this nation in recent memories to learn more about racial reconciliation and many of the things that Brian Stevenson, the Equal Justice Initiative, have been talking about and really pushing forward through their museum and monument here. So we welcome people to come, but you got to think of this. You can be right outside the front door of Dexter Avenue Baptist Church, and you don't have to have a great arm, but you can throw a rock and it'll land on the steps of the state capitol of Alabama.
Exactly.
And so many people don't recognize that in terms of a movement that was being led by the pastor of that church at 26 years old, which again, I think so many of us forget just how young he was at the time, in a city, if I could say this as a native son, that wasn't altogether for this movement, right? And so it took a lot of courage on his part and those that were for the movement, but for so many, they were fearful, and understandably so, of domestic terrorism. They were fearful of what the reprisals might be. And so when you consider the church and the proximity, and then you think about where the parsonage is just a few blocks away that was firebombed as well, it brings it all home, I think, for a lot of people when they take this tour and they can walk it and they say, well, I'm from this city or that city. I didn't realize it was this close. It literally was that close. But there again, as you said, the politics were chasms apart from the movement of social justice at that time, and in some ways still remains so.
No, there was and still is a huge chasm politically between the ways in which black people are treated or maltreated in the state of Alabama, in a movement that was led by Dr. King. And you heard the mayor say, you could literally, if you got a good arm, you can throw a rock, a baseball, from the front of Dexter Avenue and hit the steps of the state capitol. Montgomery is the state capital of Alabama. And I first went there and saw that. It was sort of amazing to me. I'm glad you mentioned the name Brian Stevenson. Brian Stevenson is a great American, dear friend of mine, dear brother, and the work that Brian Stevenson is doing for criminal justice reform in this country, and he's the one that gets all these brothers out of prison who've been wrongfully accused, some on death row. Brian Stevenson is an amazing brother, and for his work to be headquartered in Montgomery is another crown in the jewel of Mayor Stephen Reed's city of Montgomery, Alabama. More conversation with Mayor Reed when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
Be sure to like and follow Tavis Smiley at The Real Tavis Smiley and get Twitter updates at Tavis Smiley. The conversation continues when we come forward.
New music for the culture. Maisha Kyra here with your K-Black Minute News. De La Soul. Yeah, you heard it right. De La Soul's music is finally coming to streaming services on March 3rd, following a battle with their former record label. Reservoir Media announces that they've acquired De La Soul's catalog from Tommy Boy Records. This means the first 6 albums, including their platinum-selling 1989 debut, 3 Feet High and Rising, will be available for streaming on Spotify, Apple Music, and all other platforms. Other news of that new, rapper J. Cole is in the rumor mill. Fans recently noticed he cleared his entire Instagram page, and although it's unclear why he did so, artists often use this tactic to suggest new music is on the way. What do you think? It's been about 2 years since Cole's last album, The Off Season, which topped the U.S. Billboard 200 and sold 282,000 album equivalent units in its first week. Let us know what new music you're looking forward to this year on our socials at KBLA 1580.
Central Neighborhood Health Foundation is a full-service network of federally qualified health care centers that serves local communities throughout Los Angeles, Riverside, and San Bernardino counties. CNHF clinics provide low-cost to no-cost, compassionate, comprehensive, quality health care, which includes primary care services for chronic disease and diabetes management, pediatric and women's services, preventive care, vision and dental screenings, COVID-19 testing and vaccines, flu vaccines, behavioral health, HIV, and substance use services. Virtual telehealth visits are available from the comfort of your home with highly qualified physicians and medical professionals. CNHF also provides peer support specialist training and help with housing navigation. Central Neighborhood Health Foundation. Your wellness is our priority. Comprehensive care built on trust and respect. For more information, visit cnhfclinics.org or call 213-536-5815 today to locate a clinic near you.
When a cold comes on strong, knock it out with Vicks DayQuil Severe for max strength daytime relief. Just one dose of Vicks DayQuil Severe starts to relieve 9 of your worst cold and flu symptoms to help take you from 9 to none. Power through your day with Vicks DayQuil Severe, the daytime non-drowsy, coughing, aching, fever, sore throat, 9 to none medicine. Use as directed.
As a Walgreens pharmacist, I talk with people all the time about little tips and tricks for filling their Medicare prescriptions, like taking advantage of Walgreens 90-day refills to save them a trip, or using Refill by Scan, which is super easy and right on your phone. And for anybody worried about prescription costs, I say, hey, we got you, with low-cost copays on many medications.
Let's talk about making things easier. Walgreens is here. Fill your way and save at walgreens.com/Medicare. See pharmacists for restrictions and exclusions.
Let's unpack a little bit more with Tavis Smiley. The conversation continues right now.
It does indeed. With the first African American to lead the city of Montgomery, Alabama, this historic and iconic city, has as its mayor our friend and brother, Mayor Stephen Reed, who I'm honored and humbled to be in dialogue with in this hour as we celebrate the King holiday today. All 3 hours of this program, we have been unpacking what King called the triple threat facing this country: racism, poverty, and militarism. In our first hour, we were joined by the brilliant UCLA professor of public intellectual Robin D.G. Kelly talking about racism in America. In our second hour, we were joined by the co-founder of Black Lives Matter LA, Dr. Melina Abdullah, talking about militarism in America. And we began this hour in conversation with Dr. Algernon Austin, talking about poverty and income inequality and economic immobility. So we have tried to unpack for you in 3 hours of this program today that triple threat, the 3 major evils facing our democracy: racism, poverty, and militarism. King said it 60 years ago. 6 decades later, here we are, still dealing with racism and poverty and militarism. King could not have imagined when he was pastoring the Dexter Avenue Baptist Church in the 50s, 1954 to be exact. He arrives at Dexter Avenue Baptist Church in Montgomery and could not have imagined in the 50s that in the 2020s that city would have an African-American mayor. His name is Stephen Reed. So he is a walking piece of history himself every day in the great city of Montgomery. Let me ask you this. To my mind, I have these conversations all the time with friends and intellectuals. There is no moment to my mind, Mayor Reed, that is better than the example of black unity than the Montgomery bus boycott. For all the things that black people have collectively achieved historically, and certainly in the life and times of one MLK, there is, to my mind, no better example in the history of black folk in the Americas that I can think of that speaks more appropriately, more viscerally to what black unity can achieve than the Montgomery bus boycott. That story that we all know so well still gives me goosebumps every time I think about it. That all of these Negroes, for one time, for months at a time, right. It is hard to imagine today that you could get 12 Negroes to agree on anything, much less an entire city of Negroes. Everybody came off those buses and they carpooled and they helped each other out, and they rented vans to get people around. The story of the unity of black people in that Montgomery bus boycott is the preeminent example, in my mind, of what black unity can achieve. That's just me. You're the mayor of the city. What do you make of it?
I think you're 100% correct. I think what happened during that time is so significant that I think we sometimes take it for granted that we could just roll out and do this again.
Exactly.
And I don't know that we could, even with all the technology. Often when I'm talking to college groups or even high schools and so forth, I have to remind them that there was no social media. There was no Facebook. There were these things that we utilize now to try to mobilize movements. They had to do this from the printing press. If we think about Joanne Robinson, even when there was still some doubt about whether or not how far to go and when to move forward, and she was already over there with the Women's Political Council, printing off those flyers to stay off the bus. And when we think about all of the people that were involved in it, every level, and the sophistication, Tavis, that's one of the things I think that kind of gets lost is the sophistication and the strategy. And I like to say that if this were a movement led by white men, it would be viewed differently, not just through an emotional sense, but an intellectual, a strategic, a tactical sense of how this was pulled off for well over a year. And in talking with Attorney Fred Gray recently, I heard him just recount those early days of what was expected, what happened, and just how it grew and then just how it moved on. And I think to your comments, it shows what is possible when the black community comes together and sets its mind and focuses on whatever the goal and objective may be, what is possible.
We had Fred Gray on this program some months ago on the occasion of his receiving the Presidential Medal of Freedom. Fred Gray, dear friend and brother, I was honored to have had him on this program, and I'm honored right now to have on this program the mayor, the first African-American mayor to lead the city of Montgomery, Alabama, Mayor Stephen Reed. Our remaining moments with Mayor Reed when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
Say the quiet part out loud. KBLA Talk 1580. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580 reminding you that when we fight, we win. Community Coalition trains activists and organizers in order to support power building with Black, Brown, Indigenous, and people of color. Community Coalition works to help transform the social and economic conditions in South LA that foster addiction, crime, violence, and poverty by building a community institution that involves thousands in creating, influencing, and changing public policy. Founded by Karen Bass in 1990, Community Coalition was born as an African American and Latino organization with the goal of turning hopelessness and despair into action. The activism of the Community Coalition's members and community residents has almost solely stimulated economic recovery in South LA for decades, generating billions of dollars by redirecting them to South LA schools and foster care. In addition, Community Coalition offers amazing mind, body, soul resources, advocacy, and policy work, and has a robust and active membership body. To become a member, get a referral, or get support for your nonprofit, visit cocosouthla.org. That's cocosouthla.org, or call 323-750-9087. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
It's a Martin Luther King Day Black Unity Gathering, Monday, January 16th from 5 to 9 p.m. at Giordano's Ethiopian Restaurant at 4020 West Martin Luther King Boulevard, right off Buckingham. Join me, attorney and chairman Malik Zulu Shabazz. I'm the student of Dr. Khalid Muhammad, the head of Black Lawyers for Justice and the chairman of the new Black Panther Party. Come on, Los Angeles. Homelessness, gang violence, economics, police brutality. We will all be dealing with it at Giordano's Ethiopian Restaurant, 4020 West Martin Luther King Boulevard in Los Angeles, 5 to 9 p.m. Celebrate Dr. King. Join us. Free food will be available. Black Power.
I have a dream. Conversations that matter. You're listening to Tavis Smiley on KBLA Talk 1580.
I've got just 3 minutes left with Mayor Reed in this conversation right quick. Mayor Reed, all these years after King's assassination, 55 years ago, this year is the 60th anniversary of the March on Washington. King took over that church, Dexter, in the 50s, the mid-50s. Very quickly, what are you wrestling with as mayor of the city of Montgomery these days, specifically with regard to black people? What are they up against? We've been talking all day about racism, poverty, militarism. What are the struggles that black people are encountering these days in Montgomery, Alabama?
You know, that's a great question. I think what black people are encountering in so many other communities, and we're certainly glad to have another mayor, black mayor, Mayor Bass, join us as the African American Mayors Association, where I'm the second vice president there. I know you work with the first black mayor there, Tom
Yes.
Bradley. We stand on those shoulders of those mayors that were battling post-civil rights era with so many of the challenges that you just laid out, and Mayor Bradley was certainly one of those. You know, we're dealing with affordable housing, homelessness, poverty, and economic inequality. Those are the predominant issues, and certainly funding public education and funding public health. Those are the things that we really want to be more active in from City Hall, and those are some of the challenges that we see here. And that's not to be dismissive of what is happening around public safety. Those are always things that we're working to combat and to be proactive and to bring more programming to the community. But the big piece, Tavis, is really what we see in so many communities. It doesn't matter if it's Newark or Montgomery, New Orleans, or Oakland. It is, how do we help black communities really come closer to the American dream, and what can we do from our positions here in City Hall to make that more of a reality?
I don't know that there are many things with regard to the triple threat that he framed for us: racism, poverty, and militarism. I don't know that there's much in those frames that would make King smile were he here today, 55 years after his assassination, even as we celebrate his life and legacy on this holiday and what would have been his 94th birthday yesterday. I can assure you, given how elated he was to campaign for and to see Carl Stokes become mayor of Cleveland, even though Carl Stokes didn't give him the love he deserved after he won, I know that Dr. King would be thrilled to know that all these years later, in the place where he first started pastoring, there is a black mayor now in the city of Montgomery, Alabama, the birthplace of the Civil Rights Movement. Mayor Reed, congratulations, my friend and brother. Good to have you on this program. I'll take you up on that offer. I'll be in Montgomery before you know it. We're going to hang out in Montgomery, man.
I look forward to it.
All right, you stay strong.
Thank you so much for the invitation.
My pleasure. Happy King Day to you. That's our show for today. Time to make room now for the KBLA Midday Money Chain. Up next, the Millionaires Roundtable with Lynn Richardson, followed by Ahead of the Crypto Curve with Naja Roberts. Old money, new money. Either way, we got you covered here on KBLA Talk 1580. Happy King Day to you. Enjoy the rest of the day. And thank you for tuning in to our program. Until tomorrow morning, Lord willing. And as always, keep the faith.